Welcome to the first episode of Go XDGO, the official podcast of XDGO. I'm Matthew Doty, the founder and principal consultant of XDGO. For today's podcast, I interviewed two of my daughters and my wife. Both of my daughters are studying design-related disciplines in college, and not only is my wife a professor at the University of Florida, but she's also the co-founder of XDGO. I wanted to get each of their perspectives on design and what it's been like as I've started up this new company, XDGO. These conversations are candid, humorous, but also pretty informative. Well, with all that as backdrop, I hope you enjoy this episode. So I've invited my daughter Claire to come in to the quote-unquote studio here for our first little podcast here because, again, this whole XDGO adventure is yes, it's Dad's company, it's my company, and I'm kind of leading everything, but the family is definitely playing a huge supporting role, and so I wanted to bring everybody in and at least have a conversation. So Claire, if you wouldn't mind just taking a few moments introducing yourself, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Sure. Like my dad said, I'm Claire. I'm a junior at the University of Minnesota. I am studying computer science and strategic communication with a minor in Spanish. What do I do? I have a job, so I work part-time as a manager at the technology help desk at the University of Minnesota. And then my other big time-consuming project is I am the vice president of recruitment for all of the Panhellenic sororities on University of Minnesota campus, so that also takes up a large portion of my time.
Yes, people and technology. What a wonderful combination.
Love it.
Yeah, I really try hard for our listeners. I really try hard not to rejoice too much that Claire is pursuing professional interests so closely aligned with my own. But I try not to make a big deal about that. I really want to let her do her thing, but I got to be honest.
I get interface design class.
Yes, she's very excited about a interface design class that she's taking this fall.
I mean, talk about sorority recruitment. That's literally designing the experience for women going through recruitment. That's all I do.
Yes,
from marketing exactly to engagement to the timing of rounds. It's all about their experience.
And it's so fun to hear you complaining about your clients. You're like, what was it that you were saying to your mom yesterday? You were like, oh, I get so wound up about the stuff that I'm going to be presenting, but then I just kind of remind myself that nobody really cares.
Which HTML color code am I going to use? Maroon or slightly off maroon? No one cares.
But if it was bad, they would care.
This is
actually, so Haven and I were talking about this yesterday. When you think about designing experiences, one of the tough things about it is that a good experience, a well-designed experience often just goes unnoticed because it's just good, but a bad experience is just, you're like, get me out of here. So with that in mind, one of the questions I'm trying to ask everybody is, I would love for you to think about an experience that you've had. It can be with a technology, with a product, with a service. Think about an experience that you have had that was particularly bad, and what made it bad.
Oh man, let's talk about the DMV.
Okay, yes, let's please talk about the... You don't want me to start talking about the DMV, because then I'll start going off.
I remember when I was trying to get my license, nobody told you, how to sign up to take the driver's test.
And this is in Minnesota.
Which right. Minnesota state government is pretty, on top of it. They're pretty good, run pretty efficiently. But, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember 16-year-old Claire going, what the F? What am I trying to do?
Online, they don't let you sign up for the driver's test until 3 months before, a date. But when you go online to sign up for a test 3 months in advance, there are no spots available because nobody tells you that in order to actually get a spot, you need to call this special number that you can't get unless you email them. And then you call the number, and that's how you get an appointment. And it was just such a mess.
Yeah. So how long did it actually take you? You were like, oh, okay, I think I know what I'm doing. And then you went to go do it. And then you realized, how'd that go?
I was pissed. Because I'm so on top of my stuff 99% of the time, and so the fact that I felt like I was on top of this, and then it was not that experience that I was expecting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So as your dad, I can definitely vouch that you are, you, especially as a teenager, you were unusually planful.
And that's on me researching
yes.
200 colleges.
Yes. While you were in middle school. So, but yeah, so that actually you bring up a really good point. So one of the things that I like to try to identify in you sharing those experiences is like, what is it that actually made it bad, and then try to flip that around and say, when we try to design experiences, how do we make them better? So from your experience, like you kind of came at it with this idea or philosophy about life of, hey, if I'm on top of things will go more smoothly. And that was not the case, because you were on top of this, but you came to it and then it just exploded in a way that nothing at that point in your life had ever really exploded yet. And then I guess maybe that was like the first of many explosions.
Yeah. We won't even get into speech and debate.
Right.
Wow.
We'll just summarize with, Claire learned early on that despite one's best efforts, things can go drastically wrong.
You can do everything right, and it still may not go your way. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Nope, except cry. So another thing that I've been doing is I've been asking people about so you've lived with me full time for 18 years, and then you went off to college, which was just amazing. And then, but in those 18 years, you've kind of watched me and have seen me kind of dream and scheme and plot about starting my own company, and now we're finally here. What have been some of your observations, and what are the things that you kind of look forward to, or because I know that you and I have talked about engaging you to actually do some stuff for the company as well. So just, if you wouldn't mind just commenting on what you've observed and kind of what you think this is going to be like. What is this going to be like?
I don't know. I mean, from observation, like, this isn't a new idea. I know you've been talking about this for a long time. This isn't something that you like had a thought one day and whipped together in 20 minutes. I think this has been like a pretty carefully thought out and kind of several year plan. Yeah. And it's been interesting to see, I think especially like several years ago when you were kind of thinking about this and the experience that you've gotten since then at like Best Buy and, I can't remember. RBA.
Yeah.
So
Lifetime Fitness.
Yep. I think some of those experiences like helped you like be better prepared.
Yeah.
Like, to do this and to go off and start this.
What do you mean by that? If you don't mind, like, I'm not looking for I'm not looking for you to like praise me and tell me how awesome I am, but I'm curious about that.
I think you recognized early on in your career that a company like this would be really necessary and is really necessary in the business world, but maybe didn't have as many years of like leadership experience and team experience, like, to be able to lead other teams that you had like 10, 15 years ago. Yeah,
I would agree with that.
And now you do. You've seen the process of designing the experience from the level of a user experience specialist and user experience researcher, and from that kind of level. And now you've kind of seen the need for good design, not only from that level, but also from a leadership level and like a company like value and structure level as well. And so I think you can help in now like lots of different levels of companies rather than just like, this is what you need to do at this level to research well and design a good experience.
Really helpful.
Yeah. And then if you wanted to go like
go ahead.
Looking into the future of this company, I'm really excited to just like see where it goes. I know you've kind of touched on this a little bit before, but I think especially in like this time and all the corona stuff going on, what people are really craving is that like connection and that feeling of being connected. And I think the way that we can give that to people is with a well-designed experience. And that's where I'm at with sorority recruitment right now too. Like so many people feel alone. So many people are like isolated. They want that like big community sense. Yeah. And so that's like the experience that I'm trying to give to them and like show to them of, this is what it means to be in a sorority at the University of Minnesota.
Right.
Go Greek.
Well, I have to comment. on how impressed I've been with like your whole view of. We'll just leave the fraternities out of it.
Yep, go for it.
Your whole view.
That's accurate.
your whole view of Greek life and your involvement with the Panhellenic community. Did I pronounce that correctly? Okay. Your involvement with the Panhellenic community has been so much about how do we actually make this a genuinely meaningful experience for these young women, and how do we help all young women who are interested in this. And maybe even some of those who might not initially be interested recognize that this is a community that's beyond their individual sorority, that there's a larger kind of sisterhood. And it's been really impressive to me to watch you inadvertently apply the principles and techniques of human-centered design to everything that you're trying to do. And I'd like to think that's a little part of your upbringing, because I think since you were... See, how old were you in 2003? You were 98. You were like 7 in 2003? Because 2003 is when I started like...
5?
Oh my gosh. That's right. You were 5. Oh. So, okay, yeah. Ever since you were 5, I've been doing human-centered design proper. So I'd like to think that my influence has helped you kind of look at things and consider the people being impacted by the decisions being made, and and all that stuff. And it's fun. It really is fun to watch you do that. And anyway, so blah blah blah. We'll probably cut most of that out. Anyway. No,
don't cut anything out. 100% raw, real, natural.
This is the raw podcast. So what if it's 3 hours? It's all good. Okay, so what are some of the things? I know that I think you're, of our 3 kids, you're the one that I've actually had the most serious conversations with. Hey, let's actually get you involved in doing some stuff. What are some things that you would like to do for the company, and what are the things that you're really looking forward to either contributing or learning from?
I love the idea of like building a web application to, what was it?
Assess people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We love computer science.
I have my MVP of that assessment like ready to go. I just sent it to somebody. Yeah, but I really want to automate it. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Automate everything.
Yes.
I'm trying to think. I know we've talked a lot about like potential PR.
That's right.
Because that's my other major.
That's what you're getting trained in.
I'm pretty good at like research and stuff. And
cool.
If you want video production done, I'm pretty good.
You are. You're really good at.
If you want an XDGO TikTok account, I've got you.
You can manage that.
I can manage your XDGO TikTok account. I can
That's something I've been thinking about.
Instagram.
Right now, I've got an XDGO Twitter and an XDGO LinkedIn.
You can connect with your software development TikTok friend.
Yes, I can.
I make some pretty funny...
Joe, if you're listening to this, we're talking about you. I show my kids your TikToks. So, there you go. Let's see here. What else do we want to talk about? Do you have any like questions for me as we do this? I mean, so technically the company's been organized since September, but I've really been doing this full time since about mid-February. What questions do you have for me? I know you and I have talked about this a lot, but I'm curious. I'm curious if there are any kind of questions or thoughts or whatever that you have for me. Go.
Let's say, okay, so like long-term goals, let's say 5 years down the road, what would be your ideal like situation for where this company is at and what this company is doing?
So, yeah, that's actually a really good question. And that reminds me, Haven and I were talking about back when she was like 7. I showed her my like 20-year plan. Do you remember that at all?
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah. So I actually need to revisit. I've created several iterations since then, and I do have one, but I haven't updated it in months. So thank you for the reminder. I need to kind of get really clear. But the first thing that popped in your head is in 5 years, I would actually like XDGO to be kind of a small, thriving, distributed agency. So when I say distributed, meaning what I mean is I want to have talent in California. I want to have talent in New York. I want to have talent in Boston. I want to have talent in Chicago, the Twin Cities, and Miami. And I want I want that talent to be, this is going to sound terrible, a bunch of people like me. Not from a, I don't mean a bunch of suburban dads. That's not what I'm talking about.
They have to have boxers.
That's right. They have to love boxers. You have to love boxer dogs. No, what I mean by that is people who have had kind of a lot of very well-rounded design experience. How's that? And have a passion for helping individuals and organizations get really good at human-centered design. Because if the demand for this is what I think it is going to be, I'm going to need kind of an army of really seasoned, really professional, really kind of mentor-oriented, teacher-oriented, leader-oriented talent to help people, organizations, teams, and individuals get really good at this stuff. And so in 5 years, one of the first thoughts that I have is I'm going to need kind of this army of people that can do that. I think that's the first thing. Second, I am looking forward in 5 years. I'm looking for a client roster who is kind of revolving, if that makes sense, because the goal of XDGO is not to be retained by a client for long term, because our goal is to teach these people how to fish, so to speak. And so I would love to develop really strong relationships with our clients, but I want those relationships to be based on this idea that we're coming in to help them be better and then sustain themselves. And then any involvement that we might have after those types of engagements would be more consultative and guidance oriented versus we're just going to come in here and do this amazing thing for you for $1 million. And it's like no, we want to wean typical agency clients off of their dependency for really expensive talent and get them more self-sustaining. So I would like to see more companies take that approach. So how's that?
I love it.
Okay, what else?
Great goals.
Thanks.
What advice would you give to college students who are interested in human-centered design?
Oh my gosh. Okay. That's a big question. College students that are interested in human-centered design. Fortunately, for most college students today, you have access to so much more learning, whether that be formal education through the university that you're currently attending, or even if you're not. There are more programs. I mean, it's still kind of rare to encounter a program that's focused on human-centered design. So I have a master's in human-computer interaction. I was lucky enough to live in a major metro area where a university like DePaul University was offering that. Those are more so than they were back then, but they're still kind of in the minority. So formal educational opportunities are definitely there. If your school doesn't have a program, it's likely that they have a class that teaches those principles.
If even computer science at University of Minnesota, It doesn't have like a major, but you can do like a human-computer interaction like sub-focus.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And even if your college or university doesn't offer kind of a formal HCI or human-centered design or design thinking course of study, you can actually kind of self-create the education needed to become a UX professional or an experience design professional. Some of the classes that I would recommend would be a balance of psychology, business, art, and technology. Those are the four things that kind of come together and harmonize to make someone really good at this whole experience design thing. Because you have to understand those 4 points of view, as you understand those 4 points of view, you're going to realize which of those 4 points of view that you kind of naturally have passion for, and which you don't. For me, going through that experience of like exposing myself to all 4 of those areas. I love me some technology, and I can code, but I really hate it. So
I'm the opposite. I'm like, let me code for 8 hours straight. This is great.
Right. And thank goodness for people like
I made the bus move on the visual simulation. Yes. That took you how long?
Right, exactly. But because I exposed myself to that, I recognize the level of effort required, and I have like a respect for it. And so when I go and I design an experience, I'm very cognizant of what kind of load that I'm putting on the developer, if that makes sense. So those are some pieces of advice. Now, outside of formal education, there are so many certifications, master classes, conferences, workshops, even with COVID-19, there's a lot of people offering really, really inexpensive kind of online workshops and things like that. So,
like your workshop coming up.
Ooh. That's actually free. That's right. I do have a workshop coming up on Thursday. But this podcast is going to be published after that, so...
Qué triste para nosotros.
Yes. So,
un poco de español.
Yes. So yeah, I think those are the things that's the advice that I would offer. Also, anybody who thinks that they might be interested in this, it's really important to be honest with yourself on whether or not you truly have kind of a natural empathy for the human condition, or you hate people. Now, it is possible for those two things to kind of be true at the same time, but if you only hate people and don't have...
I specifically hate the people who went to the beach during coronavirus.
Right. If you only hate people but don't have a natural empathy for the human condition, I would advise against getting into this field. Because that is something that I think you can learn empathy, but it's hard. It's hard to learn empathy. But if you are a naturally empathetic person and someone who really... feels for people and their struggles and things like that. That's actually one of the reasons psychology makes its way into this whole thing. What else? Anything else? Like cross your mind?
Thinking in my brain.
Yeah.
Not that I can think.
So far, you're the longest person I've talked to. We just had a really good conversation.
It's because I know my stuff.
You do. You so know your stuff. All right.
This is your outro. XDGO.
Is that what it is? Okay, thank you. I'm glad I didn't say anything during that, because I think I might use that at some point. All right. So I'm going to introduce you, and you can correct me if anything. So I've got Haven, my daughter Haven. She's 18 years old, and she graduated from Apple Valley High School in Apple Valley, Minnesota. She now goes to college down here in Florida with us, and she goes to Santa Fe College here. Is that right?
Okay. Yes, good job.
And she's an aspiring interior designer, which, yes. You know, I'm always happy to see the children engage in design type things or want to engage in design type things. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and then if you want to ask me some questions, you can absolutely get started. So, first question: why? So you want to go into interior design?
Yes.
What would you say are your mainest reasons for your biggest mainest reasons for wanting to do that? Go.
Well, first of all, I've at least within the last 10 years have really just kind of I don't know what the word is. Divin into art, and I have thought about it for a while, and I just couldn't see myself doing anything else, and being happy with it. Mm-hmm. A couple of years back, I was watching some YouTube videos, and I saw some people decorating a house, and I was like, wait, someone can do this for a living?
Right.
And I just remember thinking, that's what I like to do, because that's what I've been doing for a year or two, because I was decorating my room, or I don't know why I was decorating my room. But yeah, I just found myself slowly over time finding reasons why I wouldn't enjoy that, and found myself wanting to do that kind of thing, whether or not it was as a job or just as a hobby. And I figured there really aren't any other, I don't know, jobs or things like that I would actually enjoy outside of something involving design.
Okay.
So I've like also thought about other things like such as graphic design and other possibilities like that, but interior design just makes the most sense.
Okay. So when you use the word design, when you think about designing something, what is that to you, and how is that different than just making it pretty? Like, what?
I feel like it's the cross between functionality and beauty.
Oh, tell me more about that.
So obviously, so let's say you're designing a room. So that's what I like to do. I design places and rooms and things like that. It's really gorgeous to have a fountain in the middle of a room, but is that really functional? Right. So obviously,
I guess it depends on the room.
Right. But if you're in the middle of your living room, a fountain is gorgeous, but you're not going to stick it in your living room.
Right.
It's not functional. And so what you want to put in there, you want to put a couch, and you want to put a rug in there, and you want to put a TV in there, and you want to make it feel homey, but you also want to make it look pretty.
Right.
But at the same time, you also have to take into consideration whoever's house that is, or room or place, and kind of take into consideration their own needs and wants for that space as well.
Oh, okay. So you had just one of the things that you just barely said about doing like designing a room and having it being kind of a cross between functionality and beauty. And you mentioned something about really trying to understand like who's going to be using that space. Tell me more about that. Like what fascinates you about that? And I have ulterior motives in asking
yes,
that.
Of course you do.
Yes. So
I think what's really important is being able to kind of figure out what the person's style is. So let's say you're designing for somebody who is really eclectic. They like to like draw from other styles, and they like to kind of bring in, let's say they have a collection of records, and they also have a collection of guitars or things like that. And so they like this like punk rock, like eclectic style. You're not going to give them a bohemian plant life style. That's not who they are. And so designing a space, especially if it's in your home, that reflects who they are is really important.
Right.
Otherwise, it doesn't feel like it's their space. And that's actually a reason why people tend to hire interior designers in the first place, is because the place they're living in or the place they're working in doesn't reflect who they are or like what they stand for and things like that.
So you've grown up.
No, I haven't.
In my house, in our house, and
many houses.
And Haven and I actually got to spend a year together last year because while we were in transit from Minneapolis to the Gainesville area, we wanted to make sure that you finished up your senior year. So we got to
very kind.
We rented an apartment. Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted at this point. We rented the apartment. We were together for a year, and you and I got to do a lot of things that to like typical parents and kids don't get to do, like just sole concentration on our relationship, and during that time, as well as the rest of your childhood.
Yes,
you've heard me talk about this whole idea of human-centered design and user-centered design and usability and all that stuff. And so that's, one of the reasons why I was so interested in you even commenting on, I really want to make sure I understand who I'm designing for, because that's really what human-centered design and experience design is all about. Tell me a little bit about your memory or your recollection of like when you first heard me talk about wanting to start this company, which we now know is called XDGO.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, tell me the story from your perspective.
Well, I have a flashbulb memory. I think it was 2011.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I have a flashbulb memory.
Like
were you
shortly
working?
after moving to Minnesota?
Yeah. Were
Okay.
you working for Lifetime? I think you were working for Lifetime at that point.
Yep.
And you were designing your website. You just finished designing your website.
My personal website?
Yeah.
Okay.
For that time.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you had put together like, I don't know, this 20-year plan or something.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a flashbulb memory of just being like, of you telling me, I think we were in your bedroom. It was like you, me, and Mom had just like waltzed in there. I think it was on a Saturday or something.
Okay. And I had my 20-year plan.
Yeah, you're
pulled
like,
up.
hey, man, you want to check out my 20-year plan? And I was like, I was like, I don't care.
You're like 10.
I'm 10. But yeah, that's my first memory of that. And then more clearly was within that last year when you were like, well, I know like you and I one-on-one in the apartment.
Yeah.
You'd like mention like, oh, maybe I should start up my business once we get there. And especially now that Mom has gotten her PhD and she's working at the university, it slowly became more of an option.
Yeah.
And so that's what I more clearly remember in the last year or so is that being like, oh, this could be a reality within the next several years.
Right.
And then obviously last fall, seriously considering it and then fully taking on the project itself.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit, I want to ask you, just in your personal life's experience.
Yes.
If you can think of a moment in your life where you had an experience with a product or a service or some sort of tool or technology that was particularly awful.
Oh.
And if you could describe
many.
That. Yeah.
Well, first of all,
or what's the first one that pops in your head?
any high school, middle school, or elementary school website.
Oh, yes.
Just this atrocity of like links and 50 million links. And typically those 50 million links change every year because they're using a different program every single year.
Okay.
Because they're trying to integrate technology, which is great, but also please just try to stick to one program.
When you say program, you mean like...
anything to do with online grades or accessing assignments online, trash.
Things keep shifting.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
What's frustrating too is like, it would just be, I think we used Campus Portal my senior year. We used Google Classroom. No, we used Campus, I can't even remember. It was like Moodle and then Campus Portal and then Google Classroom and then it was a ton of things that just took a lot of effort. Mm-hmm. And I remember just thinking, why is this so difficult?
Yeah.
And growing up with you as a dad, I understand what needs to happen.
Right.
Or at least vaguely understand what needs to happen.
You have the kind of the sensitivities to recognize a bad experience for a bad experience.
Exactly. Yeah. It was just dumb.
Yeah.
Very dumb.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from that experience, just everything that you just kind of went through is when something is when the juice is not worth the squeeze. Like you had to squeeze hard to get hardly any kind of juice out of that experience.
And then I just said, no, I don't want the juice.
Yeah, no, the juice is not worth it.
I'll find a different juice.
Right,
A lot of the times we take the good juice for granted. If that makes sense. So let's say you go on a website.
Good experiences, you don't notice them because they just work.
They just work.
Right.
And so let's say you go on a website and you're like, I'm going to go order something off of X website. And the process works perfectly. There's nothing special about it.
No.
But it just works smoothly and nice. But then you go to another website to order something and it's trash. Oh. You're going to remember the other website being trash. You're not going to remember the other website being really easy and simple.
Right.
And so that's what's really difficult. That's what's really important about having well-working machines, especially when you're a company, right?
Right.
Because otherwise, you're going to have angry customers that remember you for being terrible.
Right. Well, you work at a fitness club now, and I'm curious if you have noticed. I mean, somebody either intentionally designed the way that you serve your customers, or unintentionally designed the way that you serve your customers. But there is a design to the way that your current employer serves customers. How have you seen that play out in the lives of your customers? Like what's working, what's not working?
Okay.
And go ahead. This is, I guess, more on the service
service like
aspect of it,
yeah. One of the things that my company really does well is they really value the relationship between the workers and the members. So the experience creates more of a bond between the customer and the employee. And so that's really important because it actually creating that relationship makes it so it doesn't feel like it's just here's an employee and here's a customer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, actually that makes a ton of sense. And you used a word that I have in the last several years begun to use when I think about kind of the hierarchy of someone's experience and in kind of broadening my ability to design various experiences and help other companies get really good at that, is it all starts with, at the highest level, there's kind of this overarching relationship that someone has with an organization. It sounds like your current employer, Gainesville Health and Fitness, who is not a sponsor, just calling that out. Your employer really has been intentional about creating these really good moments with customers wherever they are in their particular journey, and then all those things kind of ladder up to a larger relationship.
Right, and so it's a bunch of different relationships too. So like obviously, so I work with the kids, and so they have to. There's a certain level of trust that kind of has to build up between us and the parent. You know, obviously, if they don't trust us, they're not going to want to bring their kids in, which is going to make it less likely that they actually go to the gym.
Right.
And actually achieve those goals. And so it's interesting that you bring that up because there's a journey, there's also like 15 other journeys.
Oh, yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
And so...
And they all kind of swim around in this larger relationship.
Right,
umbrella.
and if one isn't working, then typically it doesn't all work because it needs to all work together. And so, like, oftentimes I've actually been able to get like babysitting gigs with some of these parents and their kids because there's a certain level of trust that's been built up between the parent and I. Right. And so,
and even though I'm guessing the executive leadership of Gainesville Health and Fitness wasn't sitting around saying, how do we create an experience where people want to hire our kids club people for babysitting gigs, right? But they
encourage it because it builds that relationship.
Right. Yep.
And so, and it's the same with the other employees as well. You know, there's oftentimes like the people who work at the front desk will have full-on conversations with the guests and members that come in. Yeah. And it makes the member more likely to want to come back.
Well, we're out of time. I got to go get your mom.
How dare you?
But this has been great. Thank you so much. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
All right, I am in the quote-unquote studio with my wife and co-founder, Dr. Jennifer Doty. Would you mind just taking a few minutes to just kind of say a little bit about who you are and what your role is in XDGO? And
Yeah, so one of the things that's kind of fun is that we are both researchers. I'm a researcher in the academic world, and Matthew's a researcher in the business world. And so we bring different perspectives to research and how we can best bring things online for people. And so one of the things that's been fun is I research how to bring online programming to parents in the prevention world, helping parents to strengthen their skills. And Matthew's actually been on a couple of those projects with me. Going several years back, we did a review of online parenting programs, a heuristic review, if I'm saying that.
That is correct. That is correct.
And
what was that, 2010 or 2009? It was published in 2010.
Yeah, so we were kind of reviewing.
And then we presented at that conference in the fall.
Yeah, that's right. So that was some of my first exposure to actually doing experience design work.
Yeah.
And and applying some of the skills that you bring to my work, which is kind of cool. And then we recently published another paper where you were kind of a consultant and gave us advice on how to do user experience testing on an app we were building.
That's right.
And bringing some of your expertise again to the work that I do. And I think from time to time, I've been able to maybe inform some of the work you do too.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. You have helped me to remember to be rigorous.
So, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think it's in so much of how we do work in kind of corporate and agency settings is the emphasis is placed on speed and rapid progress and things like that. And so I think in that it is very tempting for people who do any kind of research to want to cut corners or try to hypothesize early and then run with those hypotheses. And I think the reason why is oftentimes just depending on what the problem is that you're trying to solve, you can actually come up with something really, really good without necessarily going through all of the rigor that you see in academia.
Yeah.
But there are moments, especially with what I was doing at Best Buy before starting XDGO, where we do need to kind of, actually I think one of our VPs, no, our president of e-commerce at the time said it best. We have to kind of slow down to speed up. And in that slowing down, meaning like we have to be rigorous because what we're doing is we are direction setting.
Yeah.
And so that desire for speed is still there.
Yeah.
Because typical problems that get solved with design are very rapid and iterative unless you're direction setting. Yeah. And so a lot of times direction setting requires some real rigor, especially in the research. And I remember talking to you this is a really long-winded answer to your question. I remember talking to you specifically when I was kind of getting started with kind of building and maturing that capability about like very specific things that we needed to consider statistically, things that we needed to consider analytically as we were looking at like survey results and doing secondary data analysis and stuff like that. That really kind of helped remind me that this is really important, especially when you're thinking strategically. Yeah. So when you think about, one of the things that XDGO offers is this idea of human-centered innovation, and that rigor comes in super, super handy in those moments, I guess.
Yeah, I think that is the strength of an academic approach, is that we do have this mindset that we have to challenge our own hypotheses and even assume that they're wrong and say, oh, our null hypothesis or our hypothesis isn't right, and we should assume that we're wrong,
right?
And then have to prove that we're right. So we do come about it from a different point of view, but I think too that comes with its own drawbacks. And one of the drawbacks that we have is that by the time we finally get something done, it may not be relevant anymore.
Right.
So we have to sometimes look at our speed and our turnaround, and make sure that we're still relevant and we're not taking 2 years to get our answers out the door.
Right, because in 2 years, because you're specifically looking at the role of technology,
which is moving at light speed.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's all about finding that balance of moving quickly, but also making sure that we're being rigorous, and there's like this constant tension. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned, especially in the last 3-ish years, is that there will never be a moment when that tension is not there.
Right. I think that's one of the cool things about our partnership is that because we come from different perspectives, we automatically have kind of acknowledged that tension in the way we work together. And so XDGO brings both of those perspectives to the table at any given time, even though I'm in the background rather than the forefront. That's
well, depending on the project,
right? Right.
So a question that I'm asking everybody, I would love for you to reflect on either a product or a service or a technology that you've had a particularly terrible experience with, and talk to me about that. And what is it that made it terrible? Because it's always fun to talk about that.
Oh,
right?
I have to be so careful. Internal university processes could use this service. Yeah.
So, like from a policy standpoint, or
No,
from
like a practical internal. Like we have a lot of systems to serve our students and to get things done internally for a university.
Oh, and I'm sure that people are actually actively
working on those things, but sometimes those, like making those systems work in a way that the user, the internal university employee, doesn't want to drop kick their computer isn't always a priority, because we're trying to spend our money carefully because we're state funded. So I don't know if any of this should make it onto the podcast.
Actually, no. I think it's interesting. As you're talking, this is not an issue that's unique to academia. This is there is kind of a trend now in corporate America, because the kind of the internal facing experiences and the internal processes and the way that internal groups get along with each other and flow, it's becoming clearer and clearer the impact that has on the bottom line, because it impacts the experience for the end customer. And so in the past, those have received, like in academia, it's called employee experience. And so the employee experience has just been kind of not prioritized. That's a good diplomatic way to say that. And what that results in is a lot of disconnection in terms of getting things done internally. But what that translates into is, in your world, that translates into disconnects and struggles for students.
Yeah.
In the business world, that translates into disconnects and struggles for the customer. And it's starting to get a little bit more heat and light from a professional standpoint. And there are people who are starting to dedicate their careers to employee experience design.
Yeah, and I would say I've worked at 4 different universities, so this isn't like I'm not calling out any one university, but generally speaking, in the university experience, the internal processes aren't always paid attention to.
Yeah,
and I think that every type of industry could benefit from an experience design perspective.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have to agree, because that's kind of how I make money.
Don't say that.
No, but from a practical standpoint, I mean, I absolutely agree. This is something that is very near and dear to my heart, and kind of how I function, is that when we don't think about the people that are going to be affected by our decisions, I mean, that's really what it boils down to. When we and it's not it. My experience is that neglect is rarely nefarious. Like it's rarely like nobody's evil, you know? Well, very few, sorry, let me back up. Very few people in organizations and who have decision-making power are evil. They're just human.
Yeah.
And it is a human nature thing to forget or to not consider the impacts that your decisions are having on other people.
And I've seen this both in your work and in the places where I've worked. But if it's not done right the first time, you end up spending more money because you have to go back and make it right second or even a third time.
Right.
Although, if you're thinking about experience design iteratively, then you're not trying to aim for perfect the first time around anyway.
You're embracing the fact that you're going to keep evolving and changing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we talked about a really bad experience. As you've lived with me for 23 years and you've kind of seen my career evolve, and then for definitely for the last 10 years, me kind of being on this trajectory to start the company that we now know is called XDGO, and trying to help other companies get really good at this whole idea of human-centered design. What have been some things that you've observed either in me or in the world as as we've been contemplating this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think as I've watched your career unfold, one of the coolest things for me has been to see you grow as a mentor and a leader. And I know that if anyone were to go and visit your LinkedIn profile, they're going to see how much people have appreciated that over the years, and that you take a special joy in kind of finding people's strengths and helping build their strengths out and helping them find areas of potential growth and helping them get experiences that will help them grow and expand their abilities.
I'm really glad this is just audio, because I feel like my
blushing?
face is flushing. Yeah, this isn't what I was after, but okay, right on.
But it's what I've observed.
I'll take it.
And the other thing is, I've seen you be that patient practitioner that you talk about in your blogs. You know, I've been there when you've come home with frustration, and then I've seen you say, okay, how am I going to strategically evangelize experience design and spread the message in a way that's tactful and persistent?
Yeah.
And that's so much about why you've wanted to start XDGO, is because you've had that experience of promoting experience design and being successful and building out teams and wanting to help others do that. And so, I've watched the process, you know, 3, 4, 5 times now. And it's once you've built that out, you're ready for your next challenge, you know? So, 2-3 years in, you're like, okay, what other team needs me now?
Right. Well, that, just for the listener, that was not scripted at all. I couldn't have asked for a better endorsement. And I hope everybody can hear what an awesome person I have in partnership with all this, with all of this, with XDGO. So I'm super excited. I think we're gonna do some really cool things together.
For me?
Well, let me ask, do you have questions for me? Are there things that as we kind of embark on this adventure that like you kind of have on your mind, or things that we haven't talked about, or
I don't have questions, but I guess last Friday when we had our touch base, one of the questions that I had that I think your audience might be interested in is you on your website, you promote different levels for different groups. You have you offer things to individuals and individual mentoring, and then companies and smaller groups. I think it would be worth kind of maybe stepping through, like, how do you envision what you offer to different audiences?
Yeah. So one of the things that became really clear, I guess, a few months ago is that the offering for XDGO is very, very broad. We help organizations, teams, and individuals build experience design capabilities. That is super, super, super broad. If Simon Sinek were in the room right now, he'd be chastising me, because that's very much a what. That's very much a what we do, and it's not a why.
Right. What is your why?
The why behind all of that is essentially to help other people be more awesome than they ever thought possible. And that gets back to your comments around how you've observed kind of like the passion that I have around for mentoring people and finding people's strengths even when they don't realize they have those strengths, and making them better. Kind of the driving why behind all of it is to help other people be more awesome than they ever thought possible. And the way that I feel like I can best do that is by helping people develop a capability that is desperately needed. But there just seems to be this kind of foggy barrier in actually getting there. And there's lots of different reasons for getting there. But your question was about the 3 different tiers. So from an organizational standpoint, I've had experiences where I can come in and help entire organizations kind of rethink how they're approaching solving problems. And I've kind of broken the services up into 3 areas. 1, I can help bring the people that we're designing things for at the center of efforts to innovate, to transform, or to iterate. We take a step down. when it comes to providing services to from organizations, the next level down is teams. So within organizations, there are various teams who are trying to do different things that impact the design of experiences. I have a suite of services that can help teams kind of understand where they are and where they want to go and develop a vision for that. I can help teams, I can train teams and help teams gain new skills. And I can help build teams. I can help people hire the right talent. Or I can actually come in as kind of a contractor or a partner leader to help whatever team is trying to work through human-centered change. And then from going to the final tier, really where I find my greatest joy is at the individual level. So I just kind of said, okay, I'm going to offer a tier of services to individuals to understand where they are and get better at human-centered design. So through assessment, through coaching, and through kind of critique. So my clientele is varied, from organizations to teams to individuals. But it's all about helping people be better than they thought possible.
Do you know what this reminds me of is the services that Crucial Conversations offer?
Oh, yes, Vital Smarts, who do not happen to be a sponsor, just to be clear about that.
But in my world of social sciences, people often talk about like what you need to do is you need to communicate better. Parents and children, they need to communicate, or families, they need to communicate. I work in parent-based prevention and youth development, and that's such an abstract concept, communication. Yes. And oftentimes people talk about how we need to improve communication, but they don't talk about how to do it.
Right.
And what Vital Smarts...
Or when they do, they don't agree on how to do it.
But what Vital Smarts has done is they've broken it down into very concrete steps of how you need to break apart a conversation and succeed at getting that... at getting that done, or succeed at having a crucial conversation. And that's kind of what you're doing with experience design. It's such an abstract field, but if you break it down into very specific steps and parts, you can be successful at implementing it. And so I think there's some parallels there.
Oh, I agree. It borrows a lot from a lot of different things. Well, you got to go. Thank you for your time. You're the best. I love you very much.
You got to edit that out.
Thank you for joining me, Claire, Haven, and Jen for this first episode of Go XDGO. Stay tuned for more podcast episodes where we'll be covering all kinds of topics related to experience design, establishing human-centered design, design research, design leadership, you name it. Until then, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for additional podcasts.